Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
And we're back with another episode of our Barber's Brief. You know what, Mark? We should actually call it the Barber's Clippings. I just think,
Oh,
I don't know.
like that. I see
It's
what you
like
did there.
bite-sized little things. Anyways, if you're a new listener, we use this forum to discuss what's caught our eye in the news over the last couple of weeks. We highlight our marketing moment. We get into the audience Q&A, and of course, we finish off with that of the week. Mark, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, V.
There you are.
Yeah.
How's it going, man?
It's good. It's really good. Let's jump into this. We've got... Do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Ooh, I can go first.
Okay, you go.
I got a good one.
All right.
Rising costs. That's got to be a good topic,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So Google search CPCs. So actually, Search Engine Land wrote an article just that Google search CPCs in the US went up 19%, pushing ad spend up 17%, where total Google search CPCs increased by an additional 19%. A lot of increases there, which is fantastic. What was interesting is the ad spend on Google search ads in the US rose 70% in Q4 specifically for 2023, probably speaking into the high demand that was obviously on the platform. But mobile continues to lead in generating Google search ads and clicks. Not surprising, to be honest, but tablet search ads are actually going down from a click perspective, and spend was still up by 4%. The interesting nugget from that article, though, was that 91% of retail advertisers that chose to advertise on Google's platforms included PMax as a part of their campaigns in Q4. I don't know how much you know about PMax, but I consider PMax Google's black box, and I'm always a little bit apprehensive on it. But there has been some encouraging performance around that product in of itself. So it's just interesting that a lot of retailers continue to adopt it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Performance, but it is a black box for sure.
Oh, I struggle with it.
Yeah. But it's almost like they make you use it.
You know, the analogy they use is like if you were to fill like a canister full of rocks, the sand in between the rocks is PMax.
I don't even understand.
It's like the filler. Great. If you think about it, it's the filler. It's the filler.
Okay. Okay.
Just run with it, man.
Well, I got a bit of news for you as well, related to Google, and it might help explain some of the increases in your click report there. So earnings reports came out this week. A whole bunch of them come out this week. Google, their revenue trailed analyst expectations, specifically for their ad revenue.
Okay.
And so that's actually caused a pretty big dip in their shares in the last 24 hours.
Buy.
Yeah. But 76% of the company's revenue, so like 3/4 of the company's revenue, comes from ads, which I think is probably an improvement from Google's perspective. Cloud is driving a lot of their growth, which means that ad revenue is coming down a little bit, which probably creates a little bit more balance for them as an organization. But there's concerns from analysts and the market in general that Facebook's ad business is growing faster than Google's. TikTok's an emerging threat, looking at reaching younger advertisers. And so there's an interesting component there. Like, I wonder how, I know it's the Google platform, and a lot of these platforms are based on an auction. So it's supply demand.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of that pricing power is being self-corrected by Google to make up the difference on their ad revenue.
Ooh.
Who knows?
That's a good point. Who knows? I have more quarterly earning call information here. So Microsoft is next up. So Microsoft Search and their news advertising revenue is up 8%. And this is the first time Microsoft actually reported a quarterly earnings as a $3 trillion company, which included revenue from Activision and Blizzard. After, I'm sure you heard that acquisition. LinkedIn revenue was up 9%, with overall revenue and productivity and business process up 13% to $19.2 billion.
Yeah.
What?
I know. I just saw there was a biggest company in the world kind of thing that came out recently, one of those graphics. And I think it's Apple's number one, Microsoft is number two.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just gigantic companies. It's hard to even understand.
Listen to this. Like
yeah,
the last 3 months, ending December 31st, Microsoft generates $62 billion
in revenue.
And that's a year-over-year increase of 18%, with a net income up 33% to $21.9 billion. It's like
21. They're
these numbers, man.
Profit is like $20 million.
Dude, like, how do you even play in this
Holy.
place?
That's a quarter.
I mean,
That's
anyways.
crazy. One company that's not done so well, V.
Okay.
How do you like that segue?
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Sports Illustrated. This came up in between the last two podcasts. I know it's not new news, but
they fired everybody.
Pretty much. Yeah. And it was just one of those ones for me where I'm like, oh, like I actually felt like a sense of loss, because I grew up
100%.
reading Sports Illustrated. The swimsuit edition was awesome. I loved that always growing up. And after 70 years, yeah, they almost fired everyone. There's a whole bunch of problems with the company over the last years. They weren't able to make the transition like the New York Times did from publishing to the digital side of things.
Okay.
Nearly as well, anyway, as some of these other companies did. And over the last few years, they've been struck with a lot of problems. One of them was that they're accused of using AI. Not accused, I think it actually is true, but they were using AI to generate images and articles.
Oh my goodness.
So really interesting that, we've talked a lot about AI and the opportunities for AI, but then you get to an organization like this and people distrust it. In
100%.
part because they're using AI. Like, why buy it if I can just generate something on my own? Like, I can use ChatGPT to come up with
I don't need licensing fees.
Yeah.
Them.
So anyway, I thought it's interesting because from a publishing perspective, magazines, like that actually was a huge opportunity for advertising opportunity for a lot of marketers in the past. And it 100%. Seems to, there's a whole other new crop of opportunities that are out there.
Oh man, it almost feels like an end of an era, with like the news of like Sports Illustrated. Like it was the sports publication growing up. Like they were just, that was the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
For information, for interviews, for everything that it stood for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it just also shows like you'll not always be on top. So
totally.
The last one that I had here was just around like the power of gaming and the usefulness that it actually provides to advertisers. So in an article in Marketing Dive, they talked about live streamed gaming ads on Twitch show higher brand recall, about 57% compared to any other channel, which is roughly 38%. Mm-hmm. That piqued my interest. Then I kept reading further. Now they have and I don't know how familiar you are with this space, but I'm getting a little bit more familiar, but they have these non-disruptive intrinsic in-game billboards, if you want to call them. Mm-hmm. And those things seem to perform really well. And they're citing the attention recall at 3,442 seconds of attention. I've never heard that metric before, but I guess that's okay.
Say that again. The what? How much?
3,442 seconds of attention. Sorry, I'm kind of laughing a little bit. We could do the math in our heads quickly.
Why don't they just say minutes?
I don't know, man.
Maybe I'm starting to divide by 60 and try to carry the one, add the two. That's a lot.
That's a lot of time.
30 minutes or so. I don't know how long it is.
Anyways, it's just showing that again. There's a lot of I guess how engaged people are in those like streaming platforms.
Sure.
The ads are essentially resonating. They have this other one, like a rewarded video. So if you watch an ad, then you get, you get a reward for it. So like they're reporting, they have 100% on-screen impression rate and high opt-in rates. They didn't reveal what the actual percentage was, but I can see why that is so successful. The big caveat in all this, though, is you have to be careful. Like if you want to use these platforms, make sure you understand the environment that you're going to put your ad in, and really, really lean into like fit for purpose creative. Like, don't just reorientate something that's already in market and throw it up there likely may not work very well. So let's keep that in
Yeah.
mind.
I think that's 50 minutes ish. I didn't get the number. 3,000 something seconds was
It's insane.
50 minutes.
An hour, almost an hour.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is. Yeah, it's a big space for sure. I mean, there's like billion-dollar releases for all these new games that come out. I mean, there are tons and tons and tons of people that game. So there's computers exclusively for gaming.
Yeah.
Like it's a whole ecosystem.
Totally.
In a related story to some of the things we've been talking about before, so there's this idea like, so the Google story before, one of the big growth opportunities for Google was YouTube.
Okay.
There's concerns about Facebook growing faster than Google was, TikTok, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
On the flip side of that,
Mm-hmm.
there was a study that Gartner was predicting that 50% of consumers will limit their social media interactions in the next couple of years, and due to misinformation, toxic user bases, concerns over AI and bots harming the user experience. So it's a really kind of interesting space, this whole, like, the media channels and the media landscape that exists out there is big, it's vast.
Yeah.
But there's also these questions and problems with, like, your mental health from watching this stuff.
Totally.
And the bots and the toxic content and all that kind of stuff. There's a growing mistrust, it feels like, every week it almost seems there's something new that's coming out about, eroding the consumer trust in these platforms. So it's interesting to consider how the media landscape is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Things like Twitch, things like the Sports Illustrated story, things like this trust in media. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I think, who knows where it's going to go, but there's an awareness, I think, from a consumer's perspective about how much time they're spending on different platforms.
Yeah, I remember seeing that report. I think my only caveat to that report, I think the survey size was quite small, but also, like, if you look at the declining trend, the reason why it's skewed is because of COVID, like, social went up during that time. And then I think right now we're starting to come back to what was normal, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. But I think that doesn't take away from the questions that there are around a lot of the media outlets, a lot of the social channels, a lot of the toxicity. And I think it's on us to make sure those conversations still happen, because AI isn't helping these things, deep fakes. I think Taylor Swift got caught up in a big deep fake as well, I think recently I saw somewhere. So it's one of those things where we need to make sure we're raising as much awareness as possible. That's for sure.
So that's what's in the news, V.
But you have a marketing moment. A case study.
A case study, yeah.
So what'd you find?
I went back into the FE case studies because I just really like them. So there's a great one. Again, these are the 50th anniversary of the FEs. Mark Ritson doing a series. There's one about the 2018 Super Bowl ad that Tide put together.
Okay.
You might remember the one that was every ad is a Tide ad. Yeah. So it's really cool. I mean, part of the challenge, as Mark Ritson had framed it, was that Tide had, for a long time, 70-ish years, I think, had been leading the category, both in terms of, like, market penetration and then price as well. Tons of competitors out there. The whole product or category is becoming commoditized. So Tide was trying to find ways to protect their pricing power. And come at and reinforce and invigorate people's perception of Tide. So the insight that they had for building the creative for the Super Bowl ad was that the category is built on anxiety and dirt. So it's always like, oh, this kid falls down, gets a stain, and then the parent comes in, saves the day with detergent X. And so rather than using that, Tide took a different approach and then flipped that idea on its head. I think it was Saatchi & Saatchi was the creative agency. And they talked about, rather than doing that, they distinguished themselves by getting people excited about being clean. And so then they came up with the idea, if it's clean, it's got to be Tide. And then for the Super Bowl, they had every ad as a tied ad.
Hmm.
So they had almost like hijacked the Super Bowl by making you think that every ad was going to be a tied ad, because they bought media in 4 different places throughout the Super Bowl game, the first, second, third, and fourth quarter.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So the planning that went behind it, and then each ad kind of built on this idea of every ad is a tied ad. So it was really interesting. They did really well done, really funny, clever, creative. And so I just thought that was a really interesting approach to creating differentiation, but also using the power of creative. And in the study, there's some really great stuff about how important creative is in driving effective advertising.
Yeah.
So it was cool. It was a cool approach.
You know what I love about that one? Because there's a media component to it as well. Like the idea of like, how are you going to buy sequentially to make sure like the story stitched together?
Right.
And it comes back to, I'm not going to call it an age-old question, but it's always one that's in top of my mind is, does media inform the creative, or does creative inform the media?
Totally.
Right. And I think this is one of those examples, like if you're able to get the right media buy in place, it can help carry a creative or a creative idea. And which I think they did fantastically well in this scenario.
Yeah. The one thing it didn't really get into was any specific results.
Okay.
I mean, they talked about it being, they were successful in protecting their pricing premium, or premium pricing. But there was no measurable way to get into that.
Okay.
Or at least in the report that was done. So there's a little asterisk there for me, but I just thought it was a really clever way to do that. And I think more than anything, also ironically, maybe not ironically, looking back at it now, knowing the promise of the customer stuff that we've talked about with Roger,
it checks the boxes.
I think it does check the boxes.
Yeah, that's a good
if
point.
It's clean, it's got to be tied. And so that's memorable, valuable, and deliverable.
Great point.
So I think it's a really interesting approach. I also would have loved to have seen more of that series. I think if you were, I mean, they're a smart company, lots of smart people working there, but
sure.
I think the idea of if it's clean, it's got to be tied as a platform, and then extending that using the same brand characters and that kind of thing. You could have had dozens and dozens of versions of this for sure.
I'm sure. No, it's actually it's a great example of PTTC. That new principle, if you will, is just one that keeps on giving, man. And the moment that you realize it, you start seeing it a lot more.
Totally.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
Audience Q&A. I know you had one.
Yeah. So yeah, Dale Harrison, you and I have both chatted with him on and off here and there. And he put up a post that
Smart
was
guy.
really smart guy. He put up a post that was really the post blew up, but a lot of great comments on there. And so here's the question that I'll put to you.
Oh boy.
Here was his question.
Yeah.
Can marketing actually create demand? So we talk about demand gen as a thing and lead gen as a thing. And so his question, or it wasn't even a question, more so it was a specific statement on his point of view, is that demand creation does not and cannot exist. So controversial and potentially
very contrarian.
Yeah. Because we talk about demand gen and then we talk about lead gen. And so the idea of marketing to be able to, the two functions of marketing are to create and capture demand. And so the idea of that is, I think, largely rooted in his post, was largely rooted in the idea of an operating model, like the funnel. Top of the funnel, build demand.
Yeah.
Mid funnel, bottom funnel is capture and then convert demand.
Yeah.
And so his take on that is, it's not, the funnel doesn't exist.
Fair.
You have people that are out of market and people that are in market.
Okay.
And in the people who are out of market, you can't create demand for them. Like they have needs or they don't have needs.
So I guess it's less about demand. It's more about awareness. Is that what it is?
It's more about awareness. It's more about having them remember the brand during the moments when that need comes up. It's about having them improve their trust with a particular brand. So awareness, recall, trust. And and improving the number of memories that they have, so that link from the buying situation back to the brand.
Isn't that demand? Isn't that kind
It's
of
memory?
Okay.
So in other
language.
words, I know, and that's where I think you can get, like, there's, like, for example, there's a whole bunch of people that need to brush their teeth all the
Yes.
time. Are you creating demand for people to brush their teeth,
No, but isn't
or
the
does
demand
demand already
brushing?
exist,
I see what you mean. Okay.
and you're getting them to remember Colgate when they need whitening or something?
So the demand is what's I guess naturally there, and then, but like, let me flip this on its head. Like, let's use, like, what's it called? Oh my gosh. No, why can't I remember? Remember the digital images? That was net new. That would
Like NFTs? Or
NFTs
something?
there. Thank
Yeah.
you. NFTs came out of nowhere, right?
Right.
And then demand was a subject of that, but somehow that demand was generated because it was something completely net new, right? It wasn't something that we would just naturally
Yeah.
think about. So, like, how would we apply something, this idea to that?
So the demand is, to me,
Mhm.
NFTs is a service, or you can call it a product, that has a promise of potentially creating wealth.
Okay.
So the demand is, there are some people that want to make low cost investments, get in on the ground floor and stuff, that will generate future revenue for them,
Mm-hmm.
and are willing to try all kinds of different things. So that's the demand. But the NFT, making people aware that NFTs are available for people to do that have an interest in those kinds of investments, would be what you're trying to link the NFT to, as opposed to an index fund or a mutual fund or a stock or whatever.
Yeah.
Here's another one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Apple.
Mm.
The iPod, when it first came out, 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Yeah.
Did they create demand for 1,000 songs in their pocket, or were there a whole bunch of people there with, like, that had downloaded thousands of songs from LimeWire and had all these CDs that they had
I love
converted
LimeWire.
into digital files, and they had nowhere to play it outside of their computer?
Yeah.
So I don't think they created the demand.
Yeah. They didn't create a demand for consuming music.
They
That
saw
was
the demand
intrinsically
that
there.
exists.
That's fair.
And then they positioned the product to serve that demand.
So then, isn't that creating demand for the product?
It's making people knowledgeable about the product that exists. But they're not creating. So the counterpoint to this that he's making is that
I think I get it.
if you're promising that you can create demand,
Mm-hmm.
then marketing can fix all problems.
That's fair.
Because all we need is money, and we'll put ads in the market, and we'll make people buy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get that. Like, intrinsically, you want to make sure that you're capitalizing on the demand that's in market, and you're trying to create the saliency, the mental availability against your product or service against that demand.
Yeah.
So it's not you creating demand for a specific product or service, and making sure that your product or service is there when that demand is when people are looking to action something against that demand. Okay, I get that.
I think that's probably his position on that, is that it's
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Like, if you have a pig of a product,
just the dog,
you can't make people buy it. Which
That's
is
fair.
ultimately what NFTs ended up becoming.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, anyways. Yeah, it's by the way, Dale, absolutely love your stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I've been following him for some time now, and all the stuff that he puts out there, I think is pretty strong.
Yeah. It makes you think anyway.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
For sure. Out of the week, V.
So Super Bowl is just around the corner, which is awesome. And we're starting to get a whole bunch of teasers. And we got one last, I think it was just, I guess on Monday, I think is when it dropped, which featured Victoria Beckham and her husband, David Beckham, recreating that infamous meme for an Uber Eats, what's it called, Super Bowl teaser. So if you recall, there was this moment in the docu-series. I don't know if you watched the docu-series where David's basically going back to Victoria saying, there was a comment about being working class, but her dad owned like a Rolls Royce. So she was saying that she was working class, and he's going back. It's like, come on, be honest. Were you really working class? Anyways, it's that
I didn't see that series, so I wondered what was in that, why her t-shirt said that.
Exactly. Actually, it's why one of the reasons I put down why we like the ad.
That's funny.
But it was really well done. And the reason why we like this ad, first of all, it's very current. This docuseries literally came out, I want to say 3 to 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very recent. The meme subsequently has just blown up. You're seeing it everywhere. What's the 6 tiles? David hiding behind that one wall and just kind of like, going back and forth with Victoria, which is great. So their ability to recreate that scene, I think was fantastic. And just how, what they call it, Jessica Aniston.
Oh, yeah.
I thought
Love her. Jessica's great.
Jessica's great, which was so well done. But I think it was also like little things like the attention to detail. Like Victoria's wearing that t-shirt, like my dad owned a Rolls Royce, which pays homage to the docuseries, which creates intrigues. Like, oh, should we go watch that docuseries? The other thing is also like just the idea of teasers. I think it's just a fantastic way to kind of create both intrigue, but then also maybe not suspense, but it's like, I can't wait for that ad to air now during Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was really well done.
It's funny to me to think about, like, I'm excited too to see a lot of these commercials, but they're ads. Like, we're weird people that
we're very weird people.
Like in general, that like there's hardly anybody that ever turns up an ad or stops when they're watching. You know what I mean? In general public, and yet we're the ones going, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome." But they 100%. Are kind of like films, and it's interesting, especially for the Super Bowl, how you get trailers now for previewing commercials that are like the trailer itself could be longer than the commercial.
I mean, it's genius, though. I love it.
Really,
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, V. Well, that was good. That was a good Barber's Brief. Barber.
Well, actually, what's coming up next week?
Well, we have Grace Kite, I think, right?
We do have Grace.
Yeah, she's coming back, and it's well, she did come back. We recorded it already, but yeah, she's coming back, and she'll be on the show, and it's a really interesting conversation around training and effectiveness and what it takes to kind of continue to learn and for all of us to get better.
Totally. Such a great conversation. Grace is an incredible guest as well. So, just really great with, giving up her time for us. So it's a great episode. I know everyone will enjoy. But yeah, man, it's just, it's good. And hey, I'm just looking at the clock. Like this one's going to be under 30 minutes.
That's amazing.
What? Look at us.
Nailed it.
Well, with that.
Yes. Go chase profitability.
Attaboy. There it is.
I'm trying my best on that one. There we go.
Look how natural you're becoming.
It's getting there. I'm still working on the delivery bit, but I'm feeling it. I'm starting to feel it more.
That's awesome, man. All right.
Okay.
Have a great day.
You too. Take it easy, V.